On a barren island's frigid slopes, the villain is looking for a safe place to set up camp. He wanders for miles until he stumbles and falls into a frigid river. After drifting away for a bit, he is able to get out and keep on. He stops to rest against a big rock when he is too exhausted to keep walking. He eats a flower and starts to remember how all of this started. Villain is serving a life sentence for killing 6 men. One day, the prison governor asks him what he dreams about. He isn't the only one going through this. Several of his fellow convicts are also being called to the governor's office and asked the same thing. Moryak wants to see the sea. Yakut wants to see the fight against China. Abazanka won't talk. Abasian wants to work in this prison and be a governor. Talia wants to keep an eye on the space station. And Sipa wants to see women again, but Villain's answer is never revealed. The governor tells them they've been chosen to travel to a prison colony, and soon after, all of the captives are put on a ship. The convicts are put into cells and divided into groups, much as in a real prison. But Abasian acts like he is in charge and even kills a man to get his bed. The captives start to worry when the hatch finally closes and the boat leaves. They fear this is all a deception to let them die at sea. Villain remembers a talk he had with Sipa in prison as the men start to grow aggressive. Sipa had serious mental problems and would always draw on the wall and talk rubbish. But that day he said that heaven and hell were full and that a third place like purgatory was being made for individuals like them. At the time, Julian felt it was just more of his typical rubbish, but now he sees the good in it. After a while, everyone calms down and tries to enjoy the trip by talking and eating. But in the middle of the trip, a gang breaks out of one of the cells to hunt for their friend. Abasian pretends to talk things over at first, but then he kills the man they are looking for, which starts a riot. Prisoners on both sides start assaulting and killing each other through the bars, except for Sterii, an old man who stays behind to pray. The struggle doesn't last long, though. The guards show up immediately, and after firing a warning shot to stop them, they throw a grenade filled with sleeping gas to knock everyone out. Eventually, they reach a remote island where the inmates are put in number handcuffs and left on the beach to listen to what Mr. Olsen and Marta, the heads of the Terra Nova project, have to say. The death sentence is now prohibited in all nations, therefore jails are running out of space to house so many criminals. That's why the Russian government has provided this land to start this project, which will be paid for by various foreign organizations. Starting today, the inmates are colonists living under their care. They are getting everything they need to live, including food that should last for 3 months. There are also some communication buoys nearby, and a satellite will be observing them all the time. If a green light comes up, it implies the request has been approved. They can take a boat to one of these and touch the red button to say what they need. Abasian doesn't like the notion of being recorded all the time, so he tosses a big rock in protest, but the guards swiftly make him step aside with few warning shots. Marta makes it clear that the buoys can also be used to beg to quit the project by mentioning their name and the reason they wish to depart. They will go back to prison if they do. Putting the buoys in the water instead of on the beach makes people think twice before getting on a boat. Before they leave, the guards toss a handful of keys on the sand and say that the numbers on them match the numbers on their shackles. The convicts run up to them and start fighting over them, but Dylan and Sipa remain back and only pick up the keys that the others drop. Starry also chooses to stick behind and watches a gang creates a queue around the keys to keep their enemies out. A group then goes to the crates the guards left behind to get some weapons and attack the crowd with them. In the end, Ali's gang is in charge of the situation. Ali buys himself and Starry a jacket and decent shoes before picking a man to send out on the boat. But as soon as he grabs someone, the group attacks and the fight starts anew. Dozens of men die in the conflict. Mariah kills Ali with a rock, Abasian kills Starry with a rock, and the 3 men who get on a boat to reach the buoy fall into the water and drown. The rest of the convicts walk to the warehouse to start handing out the supplies. Abasian uses the tools he finds to break free from his cuffs. Dylan fills a bag with supplies and puts on a jacket while listening to Sipa say that the food won't last 3 months. He then departs the area to survive on his own and perhaps find a way off the island, which brings us back to the beginning of the story. Dylan walks around the island until he finds a place without snow and some rocks that will protect him from elements. He sits there and looks at a picture of his family that he has kept hidden in his prison outfit. He misses them so much that he falls asleep with tears in his eyes. He wakes up later when he hears some squeaking. It turns out that the supplies were full of mice, and they are now chewing through his food and bag. Dylan seeks refuge behind the rock structure he noticed earlier when it starts to rain. He makes a fire to stay warm and heats up some water. He captures a bird and roasts it over the fire after the rain stops. That's when Sipa finds him. He tries to take his knife as they talk, but Dylan notices him and takes it back. Sipa offers Shieling some salt and his help in exchange for some meat. Shieling agrees, so Sipa goes to get more wood and sees the family picture of Dylan on the rocks. This causes him blow a kiss at Dylan's wife. They eat the bird together, and when they're done, Sipa walks to the brink of the cliff and says he won't leap because he's too scared. He asks Dylan why he won't die either, and Dylan says it's because of his family. They are dead, and he wants to be buried next to them, which can't happen if he dies on the island. The two men go to sleep, and when Dylan wakes up, he sees that Sipa has taken the image to use as inspiration for his bad behavior. Dylan is so angry that he beats him up and pushes him off the cliff. Sipa doesn't die, though, because he doesn't fall into the water. He falls onto a hill straight below. Even though they don't agree, they still journey together to see the island. Sipa has fun with the rubbish he finds in the water, while Dylan tries to fish. The only live thing they find in the water is an aquatic centipede, which scares Sipa. Dylan is astonished to uncover part of an aircraft among the rocks when he is gazing about. He has a little hope because he used to be a pilot and could fly the whole plane if he went a little further up the hill. But two men aren't enough to move it, so they go back to their refuge for now. Dylan lights a fire with some matches he found in a warehouse, but the smoke that comes from them is really bad for you. He walks away from the fire and pulls Sipa, who is asleep, with him. At first, she doesn't wake up. Dylan shakes him a few times before he wakes up, but his lips keeps saying stupid things. Dylan knows that the cold will kill them any minute now. The two men agree to go back to the base and see if they can get any coal. Life hasn't been easy for everyone back at the base. Abasian and his group are in charge and sharing the supplies, and Abasian even tells them to name him governor. But they lock everyone who isn't on their team within the barracks. They only let them out to stroll about in a small area, like in real prisons, while Estinet screams at them from a watchtower. When they get sent back, they have to sprint since the last person to get there would be killed and eaten later. Dylan and Sipa get to the coal box and see the ashes of a fire. They've been walking for so long that they're almost freezing, so they can't help but lie down close to the fire and fall asleep. But Sipa wakes up right away when he hears some noises. The gang is bringing over their newest prisoner to roast. He goes to hide behind a boulder, but Dylan is still out there. He comes back out to save him, but he's not fast enough, and Abasian's men locate them and take them. They are brought back to base, where Abasian tries to figure out what to do with them for stealing supplies when they got there. Yakut tries to remind them that they were on their side during the conflict on the ship, but Estenitz insults him for trying to get involved. Yakut hits him back, and the whole gang joins in to strike him back, which gets Yakut a spot in the barracks with Dylan and Sipa. They walk around for a while, and when Estenitz says it's time to go back, Dylan stays behind. Sipa, on the other hand, comes back for him and pulls him inside with him. They can only watch as the last man standing is caught and chained to a pole. He begs for water as his final request, so Sipa feels sorry for him and gives him a cup before he dies. Before going to bed, the group talks about the chance of rebelling. They don't know if it's safe, but Shram persuade them to give a shot. The next day, Talia shows Abasian Cut the secret trap he put in his workshop to catch any criminals who might come by. After the group goes for their daily walk, Estenitz tries to lure them back inside to play the regular game, but only two men flee, while the others stand back and come together. Yakut tosses a rock at Estenitz to make him stop talking. Dylan walks up to Abasian and says that if he lets them go to the buoy and ask for food, he will tell him where he located the jet. Abasian agrees and opens the gate so they can go. Talia and Dylan travel with two other men on the boat. Abasian asks his men if they know anything about Dylan, and that's how he finds out that Dylan was a pilot, that his family died in a plane crash, and that he went to jail for shooting flight dispatchers at the airport with a rifle. Abasian believes that Dylan has a guilty conscience because this crime was labeled as murder while he was very upset. He tells the gang to go return to the barracks as soon as the boat is far enough away, which cancels his arrangement. Yakut tries to fight them, but they kill him right away. Then Abasian grabs one more man and says the game is on again. The gang can only retreat back to the barracks because it would be a poor idea to fight since Abasian's men are armed. At the same time, one of the men falls off the boat, but they grab him just in time and pull him back up. Talia gets to the buoy and asks for aid, but it's broken and his tools won't work. They travel back to the coast, and Dylan informs Abasian that food is on the way, but Abasian doesn't trust him because there wasn't a green light to prove it. Talia reminds him that the plane is real, but Abasian doesn't believe it either. However, it makes Abasianka wander around with his arms open like one. Abasian gets distracted and holds him by the neck, so Talia takes advantage of the situation to sneak up on him from behind and kill him. Amerbek and Urtsinov, two other members of his gang, kill the rest of his gang, and then watch Estonians escape away before they can grab him. They ask Dylan what to do next, and he tells them to let the soldiers out of the barracks. He claims food is coming, and that they didn't notice the light because it was damaged. The guys don't believe him and tell him they have plenty dead to eat later, but Talia thinks they should be buried. Dylan also brings up the plane, which makes Amerbek and Urtsinov agree. They let the inmates go and inform them that the food will take a few days to get there. They won't be eating each other anymore, so everyone needs to keep calm and work together. They'll also send a team to save the plane, which they'll store in a hangar they build and gently fix so they can leave later. Sipa suddenly disrupts their preparations by saying there is no satellite and sending an SOS message using sand and 3 bodies. Later, Estones comes back to the base, and because of the new regulations that indicate they have to keep the peace, they decide to ignore what he did to them and share their food with him regardless. Dylan leads a group of men to the plane, and their spirits rise a lot when they see that he was right. They work together to pull it apart so it can be moved more easily, and then they bring the pieces back to base. Marta finally gets to the island with a group of guards. They use gas to keep the men away, but they let Dylan come and chat to her about the items they've asked for. He tells her that the generators need gas because they're intended to be powered by wind, but they don't work during the Arctic night. They really want the gas for the plane. Dylan asks why they didn't respond to SIPA's SOS message, and Marta says that their satellite is an infrared one, so it can only see heat. They can find persons in stoves, but not words. She wants to know what people were doing so far away from the base a few days ago, and he tells her they were fishing. They don't believe him because there aren't any fish in the vicinity, so he lies again and says they've been eating those centipede-like things, which shocks her a lot. They also want to know how many of the initial 206 colonists are still alive, which Dylan thinks is strange because they should be able to see that with their satellite. He tells them that 87 are still alive and that many of them are sick, but no one wants to give up on the project and go back to jail. Marta tells Dylan that he can make one personal request before he leaves. He offers her a couple sheets of paper and asks her to take good care of the group. After the guards leave the fresh supplies, Dylan and his men test the gas in the plane that is hidden in the hangar and are happy to find that it works. After that, they see a new set of American inmates come in as Marta, and the guards leave the island. Dylan tries to shake hands with the commander of these prisoners, who is a really big man. The man doesn't take it. Instead, he hits Dylan, which starts a battle between the two sides. The fight is terrible, and everyone is ready to kill, but SIPA takes Dylan with him to conceal him in the workshop. One of the Americans tries to follow them, but he steps into Talia's trap and dies right away. Urtsinov fights the American leader and loses, but Amerbek steps in and kills the large man before he can be murdered. The buildings surrounding them catch fire. The people in charge of the project are keeping an eye on everything. Marta calls the central office when they realize that the situation is out of control and that more than 40% of the colony has died. They tell her to go ahead with Code Naked Island, which sends a bunch of guards to the island to kill all the remaining prisoners while Marta burns Dylan's letters. Dylan, SIPA, Urtsinov, and Talia are still alive because they hid in the mountains or the hangar. They all push the plane out together, but just as they're about aboard, SIPA says farewell and goes to the hills so he may plunge into the water without being scared. The last 3 people get in the plane, and Dylan is able to get it off the ground safely, even though the guards shoot at them on the way. Dylan's 2 friends die, but he isn't wounded by the gunshots, so he flies away to freedom. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and switch on notifications. Thanks for watching.